This podcast contains explicit content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Creepy Cannabis Podcast, where we chat all things creepy, cannabis, true crime, paranormal, and weird. I'm Madeline.
And I'm Rachel. And what are you going to be telling us about today?
So today, for our first episode, for Halloween, for Spooky Month, we're going to be talking about the Salem Witch Trials.
Well, it's also your birthday month, so does that mean you're the spookiest?
Yes, but I'm also the scaredest of everything.
The scared.
That's not a word, but I am.
So, as you may have guessed from the title of our podcast, we do also feature a special guest in the form of the Mariganja. So what are we going to be? Well, okay, I shouldn't say we, because we live in a state that is not a free-for-all, in fact, and I don't have a medical card, but Madeline does, so I have to be fully terrified while she gets to laugh her way through terror. And what will you be using to do that today?
Well, I have my pen, which is actually an indica. It's a rhythm pen, but mainly I took a 30 milligram sativa, blood orange flavored, edible by Wana, which is actually a company that started in Colorado, so probably has been around for many years in their beautiful free land over there.
The land of the free.
The land of the literal free.
The real land of the free.
But it's vegan, gluten-free, and it tastes like one of those gummies that makes you actually want to take vitamins, so...
I like how, even though, like, the content is to make you feel real good, their main focus is to make sure all of those of us with gluten allergies can still partake.
And vegans.
Yeah, true. We don't want to forget about our vegans.
We don't want to forget about our vegans. I mean, who doesn't want no pig hooves in their candies? Because if you really think about it.
Hooves. Pig hooves. That's terrifying. The thought
that's what gelatin is.
Yeah, that would be really scary. We talked about this earlier, but I went to a private Baptist school my whole life, and, just like the witch trials, witches, I mean, really anything other than Jesus wasn't, like, the topic of learning.
I mean, it's truly like the devil sent witches to bewitch people in this story.
Which I feel like my school would have loved. They'd be like, let me warn you about the devil for reals, but they didn't. So I'm excited.
That's interesting, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it. So I'm ready. I'm prepared.
Yes, let's jump right in. So we're talking about the Salem Witch Trials, which, unlike the rest of New England and Europe, had a super sudden surfacing and super sudden ending. The entire thing was only a year. It was between 1692 and 1693. And in 1692, the town of Salem only had like 1,200 to 2,000 inhabitants. It's like approximate. But during this year, it kind of was like a little over a year, but the main trial stuff happened within a year period. So, and in that time, 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, the devil's magic, as you know it.
I know.
30 were found guilty. 19 were executed by hanging. 14 were women and 5 were men, which a lot of people don't know
about. Yeah, because I definitely thought this was like a woman hunt, not like a witch hunt. I was like,
there truly was no distinction. Like, they were being tried for witchcraft, so they never were like wizard craft, but it definitely was. There were 5 men.
I guess we should just say, though, that we're very proud they didn't discriminate. Like, at least they got something right.
Yeah. Okay. They were like, anyone can be a witch. Yeah, and the interesting thing is they were all hanged. I think there's a lot of pictures, and like in movies, a lot of times you see them being burned burned at the stake.
Yes, I am obsessed with movies, and I feel like the pop culture definitely had me fully convinced that you can only kill a witch by burning them to death. It's the only way.
Well, so I don't know why. I guess the myth of burnings in Salem was just inspired by the all over witch trials that were happening in Europe, because execution by fire was disturbingly common practice in Europe. In fact, it was that was their go-to, was burning.
Like for any type of infraction that warrants
for
death?
Witches.
Oh, for witches only. Okay.
For witches, yeah. 50,000 people approximately were executed as witches between the 15th and 18th centuries.
Jesus.
And so many were hanged and beheaded first, and then their body was burned, to protect against post-mortem sorcery escaping from their body.
You would think if you fucking burn them, their ashes are going to fly all through your lungs and infect every single fucking one of you.
Definitely be a witch.
And it's what you deserve.
But other condemned witches were still alive when they faced the flames, so they had to endure an excruciating death by burning and inhalation of toxic fumes. So it did happen to quite a few people in Europe, but never in Salem. It was always hanging. The hangman.
I mean, I guess that's something to be proud of. Like, I don't know that any would be particularly delightful. However, I don't want to fucking be burned to death.
Yeah, it would be excruciating. I think you would pass out first, but
I don't know. I think you would register pain, and then after the pain was so severe, you would go into shock. But I don't think that would be... I don't know, because I've seen a lot of movies, and people are lit ablaze and just sprinting around for 20 minutes, and I'm not down with that.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's burning the outside of your body before it even gets to your internal organs. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that.
So, let's start at the beginning. In February of 1692, I'm gonna keep saying like 1992.
I definitely read that as 1962.
It was literally the 90s, but 1690s. 9-year-old Betty Paris, who was the daughter of the Reverend at the time, and her 11-year-old cousin Abigail Williams both became severely ill. The two began to have fits that were said to be worse than epilepsy and were quite unnatural. Their fits consisted of them throwing things, screaming, crawling under furniture, uttering strange sounds, and contorting their bodies into unusual positions.
Wait. I need you to pump the brakes immediately. So you mean to tell me that a ton of people were condemned of witchcraft because some bratty ass kids were having tantrums?
Yes. Throwing things, screaming, crawling under furniture. That's all, like, I'm wondering, like, what contorting their bodies into unusual positions means. Because I'm picturing, like, The Exorcist, where she's, like, crawling on the ceiling and her neck's backwards. But I doubt that's what it was.
Truly, like, a month ago, I was babysitting my 2 nephews and my niece, and I simply told her she could not have another piece of candy for dinner. And I assure you, the contorting that occurred in her fit of rage was fucking unnatural. She flew her whole neck back, splayed out her arms, and I mean, I watched the devil leave her body.
Yes.
I watched it.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
okay. So,
yes,
okay,
the Lord
cool.
was not there in that time.
No, okay, got it.
So yeah, basically...
a temper tantrum.
And in the privacy of their home. So it's basically word of mouth. Basically, Reverend Paris was the one to be like, I'm calling a doctor. You know, this is some fucked up shit. Ooh. We gotta deal with this. So the community quickly and completely accepted the local doctor, William Griggs, his diagnosis of bewitchment, despite the fact that Griggs was an elderly, most likely self-taught practitioner who was good friends with Paris when they both lived in Boston early on in their lives. So, good friends, definitely self-taught, because every doctor was self-taught in the 1690s. Like, you just decided you were a doctor one day.
You definitely didn't go to Hopkins.
No, you just were like, I am a doctor now.
Today. This is happening. Got it.
And they were friends, and it was like Samuel Paris being like, it's happening, and he was like, yes, of course, bewitchment. So the town basically was like, okay, and they collectively decided that there could be only one reason for their strange behavior, and that is that a witch had possessed them by the devil.
I mean, that's definitely what I think as well. There's just clearly
that's my first
no
assumption.
Other medical explanation whatsoever, especially being a doctor. Like, the first thing you're going to jump to for sure is witchcraft.
Obviously.
Got it.
Never happened in the community before, but like clearly
This was it.
this is it. This is,
I mean, listen, works for me.
Eureka, if you will.
Got it.
So after Griggs announced this diagnosis, other young girls in the community suddenly began to exhibit similar symptoms. A lot of names: Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Walcott, and Mary Warren, all probably also a bunch of little twats that wanted attention because they were like, oh, they're getting all this attention. They get to go to trial. And
no, it's what it was. They were a bunch of white women who were like, we want to be a part of things. We're important.
I'm being left out.
We're also possessed by bewitchment. Like, not even the devil.
Yeah.
Fucking bewitchment.
Well, the devil bewitched them. Bewitched a witch to bewitch them.
Somehow there was bewitching.
There was bewitchment happening. So, all these girls are like, it's happening to me too. And then in late February, like, this is February. It's 1 month into the year. It's like 2020 all over. It's a nightmare. Arrest warrants started getting issued for Samuel Paris's, the first 3 people were Samuel Paris's slave, Tituba, and 2 other women, a homeless woman named Sarah Good, and some poor elderly woman, Sarah Osborne, who I believe was like an outcast of the community. Like, she was elderly, and I think she didn't have a lot of family and friends,
So I guess they're saying then that...
So those are the 3 that they came up with.
The girls were bewitched by...
Those 3.
Their maid.
Those were the first 3 people accused.
Because while this lady's busy cleaning your house and, like, raising your kids, she's got plenty of time
to bewitch them. You.
Okay. Understood.
Correct.
I mean, what other likely suspects other than this poor woman just...
And a homeless woman and an elderly woman.
Yeah. Living the American dream.
Outcasts, basically.
Got it.
So both Sarahs denied their association with witchcraft, but things quickly went downhill when Tituba confessed in great detail, including providing a detailed description of the devil, which...
I feel some type of way about that because let me just circle back to my super religious upbringing. And I feel like if something's meant to tempt you, it's not going to be this gnarly looking. Like, if a demon comes to me in the middle of the night looking like a fucking demon, I'm not tempted. I'm like, the fuck? I'm not down with that. But if you send a Hemsworth... Like, I'm down with whatever's happening.
Like, I'll come with you.
Yeah, I'm like, where are we going, Chris? Where are we going,
Chris?
So, I feel as though the devil, it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Like, he's not going to come to you in, like, this gnarly serpent form. Like, he's going to come to you hot as shit.
That's what
he's
would
gonna be
make
like,
sense.
Come on, Tituba, let's, get these bitches. I don't know. I don't know what the devil would say, but I feel like it would say...
It'd be something.
Let's get these bitches.
Let's get these bitches.
Okay.
Get these bitches. I mean, today it's pretty much widely believed that her confession was a forced confession that came after Paris beat her into admitting guilt. And there's probably also the idea that she was saving herself from a conviction by acting as an informer throughout the whole trial.
I mean, it would make sense. Like, if they had somebody malleable that's, like, pushing their agenda or their fear or their belief,
Because
like,
she's, like, a slave and literally...
It's terrible. Like, yeah, I can't imagine, like, you don't know how you're going to react until you're in a situation, and, like, you wouldn't even have to
they would have just
me.
killed her if she had said anything else.
Yeah, you could literally just say, I'm intending to beat you, and my ass would be like,
I'd be
I did it. Witchcraft. Bewitchment. I'll do it right now.
Forced confession.
I would look right into their eyes, wiggle my, like, spirit fingers, and be like, here it comes. Sending the devil your way. Don't beat me.
Please. So those are the first 3. These are just accusations. No one's been to trial. They've been accused, they've been arrested, and they've been put into jail.
Which is crazy that, like, there's literally no evidence other than some children saying that. Like, I don't even know where they got that information from. Presumably just pointed the finger at whoever.
Yes, they
and
were
like,
literally
okay,
like,
it's
arrested. Her.
Can you imagine that now?
It's
like,
her.
First of all, we would just bust out our cell phones and be like, let me show you. I was watching Facebook at 9 p.m.
This is my geolocation tag showing me not leaving my bedroom.
I hashtagged my lunch at 2. COVID didn't let me leave the house, so sure as fuck wasn't me.
Yeah, not this year.
Oh, God.
So with the seed of paranoia planted, a stream of accusations just basically followed. It basically just grew from there, and everyone started getting paranoid, because then other people were like, oh, it's literally witchcraft. And they're like, well, I'm starting to feel weird too. It was you.
Yeah, I had mentioned this earlier because even now, like, I'll get a headache and I'll Google it. And it's like, oh, okay, I have cancer or I died last week. Like, those are the only two options. So definitely when, like, everyone is together in this mass hysteria, like, can you imagine having little ailments and in a time that you couldn't just look it up? You clearly didn't have a fucking decent doctor to ask. So
I mean, this man was self-trained.
You had to just they were all doctors.
He's like, it's bewitchment.
You don't want to go to him. He's gonna be like, it's, I don't even know what else he can concoct, but like, they clearly don't
Here's
have
your cocaine and morphine to
much
treat your
like
ailments.
the America of today. Healthcare was garbage. So great.
But then, so originally, like, all the people being accused were kind of outcasts. So you could almost make the argument, oh, it's just like trying to get rid of the dregs of society.
Yeah, like a caste situation.
But then a loyal member of the church was accused. I forget, but it doesn't say
like who accused him.
Which of the girls accused her, but one of the, like, a really loyal churchgoer was accused. And so then the entire community was like, oh, well, if she's a witch, anyone can be a witch.
Right, like even somebody like in the Lord's house.
So then Sarah Good, who is the homeless woman, one of the first three accused, her 4-year-old daughter Dorothy was accused of being a witch.
What?
And her timid answers as a literal 4-year-old human were construed as a confession. She wasn't sentenced.
Okay, because that's where I got a lump in my throat, and I was like, if they killed this baby,
she was just accused of being a witch, and it was by Ann Putnam Jr., which I believe she was like the shittiest of all the accusers, like super spoiled, from one of a really privileged family, but she is the one who said that Dorothy would often bite her and other villagers like animals and described her to be a deranged child.
I mean, truly, though, these people just didn't do parenting, because also I've been bitten by many people's children. Like, truly, though, kids are bad. Kids are bad. They're testing their boundaries, and they're doing weird shit. Like, they just do. They don't get their way. Like, a friend of mine's daughter used to yank out people's hair if she didn't get her way. Like, they're just weirdos.
Kids eat poop.
They're all deranged. Truly. I mean, I don't have kids, but I've seen some shit.
Yes, you
I'm
will.
convinced. I've seen some bewitchment.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, this entire time, Salem had zero legal government.
So it was like the church there.
Yeah, it was just the church. It was basically just the church. So until May of 1692, they didn't really have like a legal, like a judge that could be like.
So then were all of these people that were accused just kind of like jailed and wrangled up?
So they're sitting in jail and no trials are happening. So by that early spring, like, it's probably a jail, let's be honest. The jail was overflowing, like, completely. 36 warrants were issued, many of them to people with family members who are already in jail. You know, like, as these accusations are coming out, it's like, oh, well, her sister, or like, so it was like very familial.
Just guilty by association at this point.
Yeah, and then a new governor was brought in to deal with the witchcraft cases. The new governor of Massachusetts was brought in to Salem to deal with these cases.
So did it make it clear, like, was he an outsider, or was he like, did he live in Salem already, or was it not really clear?
No, he did not live in Salem.
Okay. I mean, that's something. Because at this point, they're just governing themselves. Like, they definitely needed, like, a different human.
Yeah. So on June 2nd, the courts heard the first official case of Bridget Bishop, who was quickly convicted of witchcraft and hanged 8 days later on a hill outside of Salem, which later became known as Witches' Hill. And on June 29th, the court met and convicted 5 more women: Sarah Good, the homeless woman from the first 3 accusations, Sarah Wiles, Elizabeth Howe, Rebecca Nurse, and Susanna Martin, of witchcraft. All 5 were sentenced to die on July 19th and were marched to their death, where they were hanged on Witches' Hill. In August, 6 more trials took place, 5 executions and 1 reprisal for Elizabeth Proctor, who was pregnant at the time of her trial.
So she was reprised because she was pregnant?
Yes.
I mean, so at least they had, I mean, no moral compass, but I guess if you can convict a 4-year-old child of witchcraft, I guess, like,
well, they didn't actually, I don't think they convicted her, they accused her.
Oh, okay, she was just accused.
Only 30 people were convicted, and only 19 people died.
Okay, but this lady was reprised because she was pregnant, at least. So I guess there was some degree somewhere of decency from someone.
Yeah, and so in early September, the court convicted another 8 people to death, and that brought the total to 19. That's the believed final total for actual hangings for witchcraft. And there are a few other convictions, but 2 managed to avoid being hanged. 1 was deprived, and the other was helped. Someone helped her escape from jail.
Oh, so she was the only one with the right idea.
She was outie
like,
5,000.
You know what? I don't have to actually sit here and just wait for a bunch
like,
of Looney Tunes.
Oh, it's 1692. I can go to the next village and just live my life. Goodbye.
I'm in Beatrice now. Like, I don't fucking know what goes on over there, but I'm not a part of it.
So the crazy thing is that, you'd think a confession, like I'm confessing to witchcraft, is the best way to get a conviction and an execution for the charges of witchcraft.
Ideally.
You would think. But none of the people who confessed were convicted or executed, and all 19 people who refused to confess to witchcraft were found guilty and executed on Witches' Hill.
So basically, they were so afraid of witchcraft that they spared all the witches and just murdered a bunch of innocent... I mean, they were all innocent, let's be honest. But they murdered a bunch of innocent people who were like, no, I'm telling you the truth, I'm not a witch.
Mm-hmm. And there's actually absolutely no rhyme or reason to it.
I just don't understand.
Because you would think if someone was like, yes, I am a witch.
You're like, perfect, got it.
Great, got you, dog.
But I guess if you're trying to forward whatever personal agenda, like, it doesn't have to make any sense.
So they were Puritans, and I was reading, like, Puritans, they had the belief that, you going to heaven or hell was determined before your birth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is interesting, because I would think that it would be like the Catholic way, where if you can you admit guilt, then you can be forgiven.
Or even like the Baptist way, where they believe in, like,
or at
salvation.
Least if they're like, we know you're a witch, then we can ostracize you in the community. But if you're gonna lie about it,
like, how is your crime of lying so much more well, first of all, lying is objective, it's an opinion.
I think the Puritans were like super opposed to lying, like more than any other.
Well, you should actually watch, there's a movie, I think it's literally called The Witch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of newer, but it's about a Puritan family who like leaves their town and moves to this random part in the woods, and their daughter starts displaying symptoms of witchcraft. But I feel like whoever made that movie, it's the most clear representation of what I believe these people were thinking in their mind. Obviously it's fictitious and it really is about like true witches, but if you watch it, like, you could see how their minds were working, and it feels like what it must have felt like at that time, like when you're watching it, and it's pretty interesting.
Well, like, the masses would have truly and wholeheartedly believed that there was witches amongst them. I mean, imagine, it's 1692. You barely have books. You barely have doctors. You barely have books. You don't know jack shit about shit other than farming and
church,
procreating, and church and the Lord. So
it's just so sad, because the poor Lord, man, he's just trying to live, and then these people, they be tripping.
So I mean, and that's it. I mean, it seems quick, because it was literally like barely 9 months. It was so quick to start and so quick to end that's why many people believe that whoever started it, which many people think was Reverend Paris, had obviously an alternate agenda. He didn't really believe that they were witches, didn't really believe that there were any witches there, but,
he needed something to cause mass hysteria.
He was trying to achieve something, or, someone was trying to achieve something, and then everyone else bought into the hysteria.
Yeah, because there were some theories about, like, wasn't there something you were telling me, like, there's theories about bread, something with their rye? Yeah, so
the 2 main, like, causes that people think, other than actually believing that they were witches, which, they could have been, but probably not. Because of the behaviors, like, of Betty and Abigail, were so sudden and random, a lot of historians tried to link their behaviors to ergot poisoning, which is a type of fungus that grew on rye plants and caused poisoning if consumed by humans. And toxicologists know that eating ergot-contaminated food can lead to a convulsive disorder characterized by violent muscle spasms, vomiting, delusions, hallucinations, crawling sensations on the skin, and many other symptoms that these girls were claiming to have or kind of have, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it does pretty much nail on the head describe the behaviors that they were displaying.
Yeah, from an outsider perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, if you're actually attempting to look for a real medical diagnosis.
I mean, these girls were like, they should have gotten Oscars for their fucking performance, clearly, because they had a whole town.
I'll feel pretty bad. If you think about it, it's actually really sad because presumably these girls
they were definitely
really
coerced.
sick. Like, they had something wrong with them medically. And then they
possibly.
Yeah, potentially. And then
or they were at
children.
least abused by their parents to the point of lying.
Yeah, so either way, they either had something really wrong and then that was taken advantage of,
mm-hmm.
or they didn't and they were taken advantage of, but really they are just kids at the end of the day. Like, they're pointing the finger of blame with no comprehension of the repercussions of those actions.
Yeah.
So that's pretty horrible.
And like, rye was a staple grain of Salem, so it is possible that they were poisoned and experiencing hallucinations from the bread that they were eating. It was a crop consumed in the winter of 1691, 1692, and it could have easily been contaminated by ergot, causing these symptoms. However, you know, as believable as it seems, or how like, oh, you know, that could totally make sense. Like, why would the two daughters be the only people getting poisoned, and Reverend Paris is not, and no one else in the household is, or... Yeah. You know, it was really just a bunch of young girls.
And, like, you would think, I mean, I don't know how it worked socially, but I would imagine that the servants of the household, which is a terrible word, but that's just at the time, you would imagine that they would, like, what are they eating? Like, or probably, like, the table scraps or, the leftover things, or would have gotten their hands on it in some way. Yeah. So, yeah, it is a little bit unbelievable if you kind of just look at the victim set.
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, historians are like, why the entire household would be afflicted, not just a few individuals here and there. Yeah. Whatever. And so the other more likely cause, which I think is probably the cause, is leading up to 1692, there was a huge population growth in Salem, and, you know, the village was expanding, and as people were building homes and growing crops further away from the center of town, they kind of decided, I don't really want to like go all the way down there to go to church or for our local market or all these things, you know. They wanted to break off and have their own municipality, essentially. And the leadership was super reluctant to allow these individuals to have their own municipality because they would basically lose all the taxes that they collected from these people. They needed the agricultural land that was closer to the outskirts of town, so, you know, they wouldn't have as much... it's like most societies, rural is farming. You know, it's not in the cities. It's not in the main city center, so...
Yeah, and while you need that, like, those people tend to fall into, like, either the lower class or the impression of the lower class, but yet you need them the most.
Right, and yet you're like, oh, wait, that's how I eat.
And now they're like, hey, we actually don't need to just do all these things. We can kind of self-segregate, do our own farming, do our own church-going and religion, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes sense to me, because if you think about the fact that the government was the church, and the church is being threatened to divide.
Well, Paris didn't want another church to because if you're going to create your own municipality, you have to have your own church.
Yeah, especially like in such a religious-centric time. And that's a huge threat to him. And it could have been a combination of factors. He could have
money, donations to the church.
He could have been brewing some type of plan for a long time, and then coincidentally, his daughters get sick, and he's like, perfect, this'll do.
Perfect.
Like, you just don't know.
So, yeah, I mean, and because of this, it was such a contentious place to live at the time, and was actually known to be super quarrelsome by neighboring towns and villages. And during the trials, the accused and the accusers lived, for the most part, on opposite sides of the village. So 14 of the most well-known accused witches in the village were in this eastern section that was trying to break off and become its own
convenient
place. And only 2 lived on the western side. And then of the 32 adult accusers, 30 of them lived in the western section.
God.
30 of them lived in the city center.
Listen, I'm not a math genius, but I can.
I'm not.
I can put 32 together and figure that out.
I mean, 2 people were on the outskirts. So, and it's believed that Samuel Parris was extremely opposed to the idea of Salem splitting up, having a different church, etc. And it just happens that his daughter and niece started the entire, trial.
Yeah, they kind of
basically
were the jumping off point.
Yeah, they are the 2 people that started supposedly having these afflictions and violent outbursts.
Yeah, I think I definitely am surprised to hear how short-lived it was, but I think that's also because this is something that did become really big in pop culture, became romanticized, and a lot of fictitious things, books and movies and whatnot have been made on it. So it is really hard, especially this all happened at a time period where it's not like a wealth of information is available. So I just always kind of had this twisted perception. But at the end of the day, it's just cold-hearted murder.
Yeah.
For literally no reason, regardless what the triggering thing was. Someone
had
murder.
An agenda.
Yeah, there's an agenda, or
it's basically someone was a serial killer here.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is back then, who was stopping you? There was no FBI to put that shit together.
The FBI literally didn't exist until the 90s.
This wasn't an episode of Criminal Minds where you could go around picking up the breadcrumbs and just figure it out. You were just doing whatever you wanted. It was the lawless land out there. But
yeah, you could literally point at someone and be like, witch.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, too, because some of my favorite scary movies and scary things do center around, I'm really like possession movies and witch movies. I find that to be the most terrifying. But I just cannot imagine living in a time where you are just living your life, and at any moment, you're like, oh no, is today the day that I'm convicted of witchcraft?
Oh, no.
Even my 4-year-old isn't safe.
Yeah.
So I gotta tell my kids,
she bites people.
Button it up.
She bites people, so she's a witch.
I can't even control my freaking cats, much less a child, a living human.
They are possessed.
So. But it's definitely, I learned a lot because there was just so much I didn't know. I definitely just assumed all witches were burned at the
compared
stake.
to pop culture, it's quite uneventful. No one was burned, not in Massachusetts anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely different than I expected, but I think that's good. I think that it's educational for sure. And
19 people died.
Yeah, it's really sad. I'm super interested. We had mentioned that there were male victims because I
think it's because of the quarrel.
Yeah,
it was people. That's what also leads me to believe that it was
oh yeah, because if a man is fighting for his land, that was a different time. I'm sure the men controlled their properties and their land.
I'm pretty sure I read that one guy was just covered in stones until they crushed him to death.
I did read that he was it was the
one of the
previous,
accusers' husbands.
Yeah, okay.
One of the accused witches' husbands, maybe.
Yeah, he was pressed to death.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means. I know in the Bible,
just heavier and heavier stones being put upon you.
In the Bible, a common way to murder someone when they just inconvenienced you at all was to put them in the center of town, and everyone would just throw rocks at them until they were literally buried alive and crushed to death. So it's not that far off.
So yeah, a good time to be alive.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
For sure. At least now, well, you can't flee the same way you did back then. You definitely can't just skip town and call yourself Patty Joe, but
oh no,
you aren't gonna get pressed to fuck to death.
No,
you get that peaceful lethal injection.
Well, sometimes Texas still does the electric chair.
Look, Texas.
They're we'll shock you 6 times.
She's a free state. She does what she wants in Texas. She hasn't kind of come around.
Everything is bigger in Texas, including
death.
the electrocution.
For sure. Well, that was super informative. I'm excited for next week. I think I'll maybe do a true crime story for you. I have one I'm thinking about, so we'll see. It scares me a lot, and so I get nightmares when I'm trying to get my notes together. So
honestly, the scariest part of this is that one or a few people can literally make up a lie. Possibly. Or, I mean, they could have been hallucinating.
An agenda.
Or poisoning.
Yeah.
Or poisoned. But, like, and then just create a mass hysteria.
I mean, what we know for sure
A
is
witch
that
hunt,
it wasn't witchcraft.
if you
So
will.
no matter what, someone told a lie somewhere, like,
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's the same thing with Hitler. Like, he just woke up and was like, this is what we're gonna do today, country, and everybody was like, sounds legit. And
Sounds...
well, I mean, yeah, there was just not an eye batted.
What's weird is that it happened so quickly. Usually it'd be like a buildup of like, witches are in the air. But
They were just like, we gotta get this population control now.
They were like,
we
we
don't
gotta-
have time to waste.
no time.
Literally time to do the
Amen.
Lord's work. I don't know. It's just crazy to me, but it was very interesting. How do you feel about the Wana now that this is
very
done?
nice. It's very good. It's lasted the whole time. First
feel
time
like
and second time.
It didn't make
recording.
you like super giggly or anything.
Yeah, it's like a sativa. The interesting thing about edibles is that you can't see the breakdown of like the different terpenes, the different, things that are helpful. So it's basically just, it says sativa, but actually most edibles don't even distinguish between sativa or indica. They're
Gotcha.
just weed.
I'm
Hybrids
very
probably, but
interested in this.
sativa is an upper. That's what you want to take during daytime use. Indica is what is more relaxing. That's what you want before bed. It's better for pain relief, anxiety relief, stress relief.
So basically, instead of reducing your anxiety, you took an upper so you could get hyped to tell us about these murders.
So I didn't fall asleep or forget where I was.
Like, oh my gosh. Can you imagine if it was me? Because I definitely...
Actually, it's weird because my pen is an indica, so I've probably been evening it out.
I just feel like I would eat an edible and then eat everything in the house. Like, I'd be in the middle of telling a story and I'm like, I gotta go grab some bagel bites real quick.
I mean, I can
BRB.
always snack, let's be honest.
Yeah. But good. I'm glad to hear it. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what you bring next week. I definitely think it should be an upper because I'm planning on wrecking your brain.
I mean, I think it should be something relaxing because you're going to wreck my brain.
I don't know. I think I'm going to make you really sad. I don't want to have you freaking out. Just drooling over the corner as like I tell you some terrifying story.
I guess we'll see.
Thank you guys so much for bearing with us. It was a journey to get here.
It was.
And,
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.